part one of the two-part story. If you enjoy it, let me know and I'll try and dig up part two. Susan knew that the information she needed was somewhere in the CEO's office. What she hadn't expected was that there would be others in the office so late in the evening. As she hid under the desk of the CEO's secretary, she could hear voices coming from his office. Talk of dirty dealings and embezzlement of company funds seemed to be the topic of discussion. This was exactly the proof she was looking for. Susan recognized the voice of Mr. Miller, the company's chief executive officer, but who was he talking to, she wondered. She slowly crawled out from under the desk and moved to the other side of the cubicle, where she looked up over a filing cabinet to get a better view. Stevens, she thought, as she could clearly see the two of them now in a heated discussion. Perfect, just keep talking, boys, she thought. This was more proof than she had ever hoped to get. I think I have seen and heard enough for one evening. Now is as good a time to get out of here, Susan thought, but she still found herself mesmerized by the scene that was being played out before her. Well, maybe just a couple more minutes, she thought. But right then she found herself quickly distracted from what was going on in Mr. Miller's office by an all too familiar feeling. She looked down only to find a vase of freshly picked flowers sitting right under her nose. A wave of horror swept over her as she felt her back quickly become covered with a layer of sweat as her heart pounded in her chest. Her whole life Susan had battled with her allergies and had tried everything to win in the fight against them. Whether it was allergy shots in high school or prescription antihistamines in college, it always seemed that the allergies won. She felt a tickling, burning type sensation way back in her nose as she stared into the collection of flowers. She thought to herself, oh great, that is all my allergies need. As she slowly raised her hand to place under her nose. While doing so, she accidentally brushed her hand against a magnet that was holding some papers to the metal cabinet, causing them to fall to the ground. Susan froze. She could hear the men in the office. Did you hear that? Do you think someone's out there? And then they became real quiet. Susan looked down at her hand, which was now just hanging in space less than a foot from the underside of her nose. She felt her eyes beginning to tear up as the tickle worked its way down to her flaring nostrils. She prayed the men would start talking again, but there was nothing but silence. She slowly, ever so slowly, started to move her hand again up towards her twitching nose. Her mind drifted in thought to the villain in the telltale heart, but she was suddenly brought back to reality as she felt her finger come to rest on the underside of her nose. She felt her eyes becoming heavy-lidded as she thought to herself, those flowers are driving my nose crazy. I feel as a shuddering breath came over her. Like I'm going to sneeze. A wave of fear crashed over her. No, not a sneeze, not now, they will hear me for sure, as she slowly stroked her finger against her nose. She slowly backed away from the flowers as she felt a single tear run down her cheek. Her eyelids grew heavier as she fought to keep them open. Her hitching breaths became audible as the sneeze began to grow. Please no, she begged herself, not now, not a sneeze. She could feel the sneeze building deep inside her nose, its power becoming unmanageable. Her nose wanted to sneeze, it needed to sneeze to expel all of the allergens that were trapped, tickling around inside her nasal cavity. She felt her eyes close and her chest expand in preparing to explode with a powerful sneeze. Susan could hear footsteps coming up from behind her, but still there was nothing more she could do. The sneeze was upon her.